married. That was so cute. I was like, yes! I thought that was so funny. I loved her like sassiness. Ugh. Something fishy is going on. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm nervous. Oh my gosh. I laughed so hard when I read that part, especially. Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you my book diary for part 1 of Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. If you're not familiar with my book diaries, this is basically going to be my spoilery thoughts and reactions to part 1 of Oathbringer. Like all of the other Stormlight Archives books, Oathbringer has 5 parts, so I'll have 5 of these videos, one covering each part. So do not watch this video if you haven't read part 1 of Oathbringer. I will have timestamps in the description box by chapter check-ins, so if you want to watch and read along at the same time. I've had some comments from people saying that they've enjoyed doing it that way because I do have 3 of these videos for the end of Words of Radiance, which I will link for you guys if you're interested. So you can either read along and watch as you finish chapters, you can watch after you finish all of part 1, or of course you can watch it if you've already read all of Oathbringer. I have at this point finished Oathbringer, and it was so much fun editing this video, knowing how everything ends, and seeing what all of my theories and thoughts were as I was going through the book. Also, I filmed almost the entirety of this video while I was camping in October. I do have a reading vlog from when I went camping, which I can link for you guys if you're interested, but editing this video just had me so nostalgic for my camping trip and reminding me of how much fun I had and all of the reading I did in my hammock. So hopefully you guys enjoy a little bit of the scenery as well. Alright, this video is already really long. Let's get on into my thoughts. Hey guys, so I just finished the first 7 chapters of Oathbringer, and nothing like too crazy has happened, but I definitely have a few thoughts that have piled up over the last 7 chapters. I only recently became aware that all of the prologues have all been the night that Gavilar was assassinated, but from different point of views. So it was super interesting to see Eshonai's point of view and kind of what ended up causing the Parshendi to assassinate Gavilar. I mean, we'd already kind of been hinted at that he was trying to bring back the gods, but we saw like that conversation between them. I'm very intrigued by the idea that the stormlight that's inside infused spheres is Spren. That was kind of hinted at in the last book, because I remember thinking about that, but like being confused because nobody else, like no humans, had really considered, not even like Kaladin had considered the light inside spheres to be Spren, and maybe I'm still misinterpreting what that really means. But it also sounded like Gavilar wanted to trap maybe an evil Spren or something, and that was gonna bring the god. I don't know. I still don't understand exactly what that conversation meant, but it was very interesting. And then Dalinar and Navani got married. That was so cute. I loved that part. I love that they had Stormfather marry them. I had like a big grin on my face in that scene, and after they got married, Adolin basically skipped over to them and was just like so happy and gave them a big hug, and I just thought that was really cute. Which reminds me, we got a flashback to when Dalinar, it was like 35 years ago, and I was kind of expecting this, but obviously Dalinar was a very different person back then. You know, he's changed a lot, so I'm interested to see how he goes from being that person to being who he is now. Oh, and in the chapter when Navani and Dalinar got married, he basically came clean to Navani and said that he doesn't remember his wife, and they talked about like how he had a boon and a curse, and he knew what they both were. And when this was mentioned in a previous book, I was kind of thinking that the boon was that he had asked to forget his wife, like he was so heartbroken over it that he didn't want to remember her anymore. But after this more recent conversation, I'm kind of thinking maybe that was the curse. And I'm wondering if maybe the boon that he asked for was to like change his personality, like maybe that's why he's such a different person now, because he asked for, I don't know, like more control over his emotions or something like that. But I am super intrigued in all of the stuff that happened in his past and how he became who he is today, and to learn what actually happened with his wife, which we learned a little bit more about that. It sounds like she was like kidnapped, and that he married her for her shard plate. So I'm very interested in learning more about that stuff, but I'm also nervous because I really like Dalinar, and I think that he's done something or some things that were very terrible that he wanted to forget and be a different person for. So I don't know, I'm anxious. And then Kaladin goes back to Hearthstone. His reunion with his parents almost brought tears to my eyes. It was so sweet, and his mom and his dad, and I just, it was so sweet. And then I really loved when he punched Roshon in the face. I was like, yes! And then, of course, everybody's like freaking out, and he starts giving people orders, and the soldiers are kind of like listening to him, but like really unsure. And then Roshon is like, what makes you think you can like give us orders? And he pulls out his shard blade, and everyone was just like, okay. I thought that was so funny. He says something like, any other questions? I love that part. And then the chapter that I just read was basically Kaladin getting ready to leave again, and his mom shows him that he has a little brother, which I kind of guessed, like the chapter right before, she said there was something she had to tell him, and I guessed that they'd had another kid, so that was really cool that I was right about that. And he got so like emotional about his little brother, which I thought was super sweet. Also, Syl said something in one of these chapters about, you know, she remembers his parents, and Kaladin was like, how do you remember them? Because you weren't around back then. And she was like, said something about everybody's connected, but she said something like there was this other presence, this other light, and I feel like she's talking about there being another Spren, like maybe there's another person who's a Radiant. My guess is maybe Kaladin's dad. Maybe that's why he can like heal really well, like maybe he's an edge dancer. But when Kaladin showed that he was a Radiant by taking in Stormlight, his dad was really shocked, so maybe not. But I'm really curious what Syl was talking about there. Oh, and in this section, Kaladin and Laurel, they are reunited, and that was really interesting. I love that Kaladin was like, I was planning to come back and save you, and Laurel's like, what makes you think I needed to be saved? I loved her like sassiness. Ugh. Things are off to a really good start. Nothing crazy, but I've had a lot of emotions so far, so I wanted to share that. All right, check in with you guys soon. I just finished reading chapter 9, and something fishy is going on. So in this chapter, they find another dead body. Someone has been murdered in exactly the same way as Sadeas was, which Sadeas was killed by Adolin at the end of the last book. Adolin is visibly shocked, and it's from Shallan's point of view, and she's like confused. She thinks that maybe he knew the new guy that was murdered, but he didn't. He's just shocked because obviously he didn't kill this second guy. So somebody is trying to, I don't know, make Dalinar look bad. Do they know that it was Adolin and they're trying to make Adolin look bad? Because if it comes out that Adolin killed Sadeas, they're going to think that Adolin killed these other people or this other person at this point. But I'm guessing this might be the start of like a streak of murders. And then the kicker is that Dalinar puts Adolin in charge of investigating the murders, and he thinks that maybe if he puts his son in charge of the investigation, they'll see that Dalinar didn't have anything to do with it, or he also says maybe it'll make them think that I'm trying to cover something up. So I am very curious if Adolin is going to come clean to his father and tell him what happened with Sadeas, or if he's just going to keep trying to cover this up and play this whole charade. It's funny because Shallan says something about how Adolin like can't hide things, so I think it's funny because obviously he's hiding something right now. Guys, I'm laying here in my hammock reading. I've got my book right here, and I just finished chapter. What chapter is this? Chapter 12. It's called Negotiations. So it's a chapter where Dalinar is sending span read messages to people like rulers all over Roshar, trying to get them to be on his side. Basically, everybody's kind of just shutting him down until at the very end of the chapter, one of the monarchs responds with a like positive response saying that they happen to have found a Radiant who's willing to work with them to open the Oath Gate. And the ruler this is Taravangian, which I guess I'm not surprised by that. But I'm so nervous because obviously Dalinar doesn't know that Taravangian is not on his side, but we do. The last sentence of this chapter has got me so concerned because it says, if Dalinar failed everywhere else, at least he would have King Taravangian at his side. That's not a good thing, Dalinar. You don't want Taravangian with you. He's not on your side. Oh my god. Oh my god. The other thing that was interesting in this chapter was poor Gavilar. Or not Gavilar, I'm sorry, Elokar. In the last book, there was a scene that made me feel bad for Elokar because he basically was like crying to Kaladin about how he's not a good king, but that he tries and wants to be. And in this chapter, he, I guess, is again feeling sorry for himself a little bit, but he realizes that Dalinar's kind of like basically taken charge and he tries to abdicate to his uncle. Poor kid. I mean, I know he's not a kid, but I really hated him in The Way of Kings because he's just like so spoiled and all he wants to do is party. And then after Words of Radiance, I kind of felt bad for him because he, like, you know, was down on himself because he wants to be a good king and he just doesn't know how to do it. And then after this chapter, he tries to abdicate to Dalinar. They basically change it to where, like, Dalinar is going to be the High Prince or King of Urithiru, but that, you know, when Dalinar is in Alethkar, he still has to answer to Elokar, which I thought was like a pretty good compromise. The other thing that was like really cute was, so then Dalinar and Elokar come up with this plan for Elokar to help take back, what is the name of this city? To take back Alethkar. Man, all of these names sound so similar. So he needs a Radiant to go there with him so they can unlock the Oath Gate and everything, and he requests that Kaladin be the one that goes with him. And he says all these nice things about Kaladin, and basically, like, if Kaladin comes, then if Elokar, like, fucks up, that Kaladin can still help save the day, and that he can, like, learn from Kaladin how to be a hero, basically, and I just thought that was really cute. But it seems like Elokar is having a growth in his character arc, and I think that he's growing on me. I definitely feel bad for him because it seems like he wants to be a good king, and he's struggling. Anyways, I needed to update you about the Taravangian thing because I'm very nervous. Dalinar has no idea what Taravangian is up to, and it does not bode well that Taravangian is the only monarch who is willing to help. I'm nervous. Okay, so I just finished a couple more chapters. There was a Shallan and Adolin chapter, and man, I'm definitely a fan of Kaladin and Shallan. After, you know, the whole storm date that happened in Words of Radiance, I was a huge fan of them. I just think they have such good chemistry and they just understand each other and everything, and they're so cute. But this chapter with Adolin and Shallan was so cute that it kind of makes me like them. I have a feeling that this is going to be one of those love triangles where I like both options. That very rarely happens because it has to be done in a way that I find super believable, but I kind of feel like I'm really digging both of them right now. I don't know. I think that with Adolin, Shallan isn't, you know, totally herself and she has secrets, and that's not great in a relationship, but they're also kind of cute together, so I don't know. That chapter was super cute. And then the next chapter was Kaladin, and he comes across some Voidbringers that are not Voidbringers, and they, like, discover that he's there, and he's, like, about to fight them when he realizes that they're more scared of him than he is of them, and he decides to surrender to them. So that's really interesting. Not sure how that's going to go, but obviously these Parshmen, they've changed. They're not the same as the Parshmen that they were before, but they're also not Voidbringers. So I'm very curious to find out, you know, what's going on with them and what he finds out from them. Oh my gosh. So I just finished chapter 16, and at the end of this chapter, we finally learn what Dalinar's wife's name was because he hears it. That was crazy. And he starts remembering things, and that's, of course, how the chapter ends. My only guess is that somehow, because in this chapter, he finally uses Stormlight for the first time. So did it heal him? I mean, I didn't think it was like something that was healable, because it's like old magic that he went to wherever to get. So that's kind of surprising, but yeah, that's pretty crazy that like now he heard his wife's name and is starting to remember things. The other thing, there was a lot to unpack in this chapter, but in this chapter he also was talking to, at the beginning, he was talking to the Stormfather about the shard blade that he has, and they talk about how it doesn't have a gemstone in it that is needed to be able to bond with a shard blade, and that's because it's not a dead sprent. And it also mentions that it doesn't scream whenever he holds it. And Stormfather explains that it's an honor blade that was made directly from honor in the past and given to heralds. So I remember that in the last book, in one of the interludes, Taravangian, when Seth was saying that he came across a radiant or someone with powers, Taravangian started talking about an honor blade and saying that like one had disappeared from somewhere. And so I'm confused because the honor blade that Dalinar has right now is the one that Seth had. So Taravangian had to have known that that's what Seth had, right? So like, is he talking about there's another honor blade that's gone missing? It sounds like the honor blades are the blades of the heralds. There was that herald that showed up at the end of the Way of Kings and was in Wars of Radiance, but his blade, I think, had a gemstone in it to allow bonding because Dalinar bonded it at the end of Words of Radiance. So I'm really confused about all of this. I mean, I think you're supposed to be confused and we don't understand it all. But apparently the blade that Seth had before that now Dalinar has is an honor blade. Is it the same honor blade that Taravangian in the last book was saying had disappeared from somewhere? I don't think so, because it was Seth's blade. But hopefully we'll learn more about that. But yeah, that ending where Dalinar heard his wife's name for the first time blew my mind. That's pretty crazy. Hey guys, I've read quite a bit since my last check-in, but it was kind of dark last night and I didn't feel like checking in the dark. So I waited a little bit and then I also read some more today and haven't checked in. So it's time. I've read up through the end of chapter 24 and nothing like major has happened, but a lot of like little things that I want to mention. So Kaladin, the last time I checked in, he had surrendered himself to the Voidbringers that are not Voidbringers. He at this point has like convinced them semi that he's a good guy. He's been helping them to kind of escape because he feels bad for them because he's been a slave before too. And the Voidspren that I'm skeptical is actually a Voidspren because it's yellow, not red, has revealed itself, or at least one of them has revealed itself to Kaladin and is curious about him, but Kaladin's pretending like he doesn't know that Spren like that exist. Oh, and we had a chapter from Shallan's point of view where she pretended to be Vale, and she went to these like hole-in-the-wall bars to try and find out more information about these murders. I thought she was being a little bit over the top in that chapter because she was trying to like pretend to be big and badass. But basically, she stabs someone, like she stabs her own hand so that she could stab this other guy's hand. I thought it was a little bit ridiculous, but also it was really entertaining. But she finds out that there was another like mimic murder, not exactly like what happened to Sadeas, but some guy killed his wife, and then the next night or a couple nights later, there was another murder that was done in the same way as how that guy killed his wife, and they thought that he had done both of them, but he swore that he didn't. So there's something going on that is causing murders to be mimicked for some reason. And I have no idea what it is. I feel like it's got to be some sort of like supernatural creature that has like this urge to mimic murders or something. Because I can't imagine why like an actual person would get benefit out of that. And then we got a flashback to Dalinar's past. It was 31 years ago. It was like basically the night. Oh shoot. I just realized my mic isn't plugged in. Okay, sorry, I just realized my mic wasn't plugged in. Hopefully this sounds a little bit better and the other sound wasn't terrible. But we get a flashback for Dalinar 31 years ago on a night where he basically like meets and starts the planning for his engagement to his wife, so we're starting to learn more about his wife. It's definitely interesting to see Gavilar, Sadeas, and Dalinar working together. Dalinar is definitely very different from how he is now, and I can totally see why Sadeas kept saying, like, what happened to you? You changed, because Sadeas doesn't seem to have changed. Something that was interesting in this chapter was that Dalinar he's like drunk, and he walks out into the high storm to go look for a knife that he couldn't find, and most people are shocked, but he makes it seem like it's not a big deal. And I can't decide if that's some sort of like foreshadowing. I mean, obviously it's not foreshadowing because we already know what Dalinar can do, but like, was that some sort of, oh, it's really windy. I wonder if that was some sort of like early manifestation of his powers to be able to walk through the storm, or if it really was that it was kind of sheltered in the area that he was walking around in. But everybody definitely seemed really shocked when he did that. And then we have a chapter where Shallan and Adolin go to meet with Sadeas' wife. What's her name? Eoli or something like that? And she obviously thinks that someone in Dalinar's camp is responsible for the death of her husband. And Adolin is, trying to convince her that his dad wasn't involved, because obviously his dad wasn't. All of that was just like awkwardly interesting and funny because we know who killed Sadeas. But the really interesting part is when Shallan and Adolin show up, Mraize is there next to Sadeas' wife, and I definitely gasped when I saw that part. But I'd actually kind of forgotten that Mraize knew Shallan's real identity. At first I thought she was like at an advantage because she knew who he was, but I didn't think that he knew who she was. But obviously I read the next chapter and then I remembered from the last book that they figured it out. But he does confirm that Sadeas and his wife are not involved in the Ghost Bloods. Also, Mraize says something to Shallan about he wants her to do something for him. He wants her to figure out what the darkness is in Urithiru. There's just like this presence, I guess, that they've all been feeling, and the Ghost Bloods want to secure Urithiru so they can properly use the advent of the Voidbringers, whatever that means. And he says that if she does this, he will pay her with information about Hellerand, which I find very enticing. Oh, and we also learn that Amaram has been put in charge of investigating Sadeas' murder by Sadeas' wife. So Amaram is in the city. Dalinar doesn't know that yet, and apparently Sadeas' wife is trying to use him, so that's an interesting dynamic. And then in the last chapter that I read, Taravangian shows up at Urithiru, and he's either having one of his like dumb days or he's pretending, because Dalinar thinks that he's kind of feeble-minded. The conversation between Dalinar and Taravangian was so interesting because we know so much more about Taravangian and the fact that he could possibly be pretending to be dumb right now, and that he's behind the murders of the White Assassin, or the Assassin in White. And poor Dalinar, like, he's tried so hard politically to get other people on his side, and for now, it's just him and Taravangian. I actually thought that Taravangian might use this scene, this little meeting, as an opportunity to kill Dalinar himself. I can't remember if in the last book, I feel like possibly Taravangian said something about if you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself, but I don't know if I'm just imagining that. But I definitely was concerned that Taravangian was gonna try and kill Dalinar, like, in this chapter. It didn't happen, but I am not counting it out that that could still happen. Alright, those are all my thoughts so far, and I will check in with you guys when I have some more thoughts. Hey guys, so it's our last day camping. It's been kind of overcast and chilly all day, but I'm still enjoying my hammock. I just read a few more chapters. I just finished chapter 25, and it was a Shallan chapter, and some interesting things happened. She was going exploring, and she found like this amphitheater and was like telling a story, and she was using her illusions, and when she let go of her illusions, one of the figures or shadows that was in the room ran away and was not one of her illusions, so she chased it. And I'm wondering if that is whatever darkness and wrongness they're feeling in Urithiru. But she chases it and it disappears, but she finds some sort of spren in the wall, which I didn't really understand. It didn't sound like that was the shadow that she was chasing, but maybe it was something else. And then she hears a scream, which she follows, and she finds that rock
a horn eater has been stabbed through the hand. So it seems like whatever was mimicking the last two murders that happened or that we know of, it's not just murders this thing is mimicking. It might be any kind of violence, because this was obviously a replica of what Shallan did the other day as Vale when she stabbed a horn eater through their hand. So that is very interesting, and I wonder if this is the shadow that Shallan was just chasing, and maybe it's some sort of spren, like some kind of evil dark spren. I don't know. I must read and find out.
Hey guys, so I've actually read quite a bit since my last check-in, like 100 pages, but I was doing all of my reading like really late at night and I would just fall asleep right afterwards, and I haven't been checking in with you guys, so I've got a little bit of updating to do. I've got the book here. I'm gonna flip through it and tell you what I thought when I read these things. There was a flashback from Dalinar's perspective, or obviously, because that's what all the flashbacks in this book are, but it was the chapter where Dalinar gets really upset with Gavilar and like almost kills him, or almost decides to kill him, and then at the last minute decides not to, and basically swears to himself that he will never be king because he doesn't want to do that to his brothers. It's just really interesting seeing how different Dalinar used to be, and I am really intrigued to see how he has become the person he is now, because I really like the person he is now, so I'm interested in seeing his character arc over the course of this book. Oh my gosh, and then the next chapter, chapter 27, I got really angry with Adolin. Not angry, but frustrated, because he basically reveals to Shallan that Kaladin is the one who killed her brother. Shallan doesn't really react to this information. She just kind of like shoves all the emotions down. So on the one hand, like, I was kind of interested in how she was going to react and process that information. So I'm kind of bummed that she didn't, but at the same time, I'm really bummed that Adolin is the one who revealed that, because I would much have preferred that to have come from Kaladin's mouth and not Adolin's. I feel like that wasn't his secret to tell. I mean, it wasn't really a secret, but it kind of was. Like, I was so frustrated that he did that. The next chapter, chapter 28, was super interesting. There is some conversation between Taravangian and Dalinar. It's just always interesting seeing Taravangian. Oh, but at the end of this chapter, Dalinar is having a conversation with Stormfather and realizes that he can show the visions he's been having to other people, which I think sounds really cool, and I'm excited to see where that goes. And then chapter 29 was definitely kind of creepy, and I felt like, I mean, I'm reading this in October, and I felt like it's just like the perfect time to read that chapter, because the Unmade, one of the Unmade, Saphir, the Midnight Mother. Very interesting spren. I don't totally understand what she is. I really loved when Shallan sent Pattern to go get Adolin. Adolin said that he came at me in the training room screaming that you'd found the killer. Said that if I didn't come, you'd probably, and I quote, go and do something stupid without letting me watch. I laughed so hard when I read that part, especially the way that Kate Redding does Pattern's voice. Ugh, I love Pattern. Anyways, Shallan is able to like fight off this Midnight Mother thing. Don't know what this is. It's kind of creepy. It must be this darkness, wrongness that Mraize was talking about feeling, and Shallan said she felt in the tower. Is it also why Shallan's been drawing these really creepy pictures and doesn't know why? I don't know. The next chapter, we're back to Kaladin's point of view, which I feel like we hadn't been in for a little while. And he has basically arrived at the destination where the Parshmen were heading towards, or the Parshendi, but there are some actual Voidbringers with this group, and so Kaladin decides that this is the time to run away. So he flies up into the air to escape them, but then he sees that there's a bunch of people in pens, and there's a high storm coming, so being the noble person he is, he tries to save them, or he does save them. He convinces the other Parshendi to let them into the barracks and stuff. Somehow he's able to like hold back the storm, which I don't think he's done before. And then he heads back to Urithiru. So I'm excited that he is going to be back with all of the other characters. I enjoyed this little meandering he took to his home and then learning more about what has happened to some of the Parshendi. All of that was super interesting, but I'm glad that he's back with the rest of the cast. And then the next chapter, chapter 32, is the last one in part 1. And I just had such a big smile on my face when I read this chapter. I really wish I had just pulled out the camera right then. But at the end of this chapter, Yasna makes a reappearance. Oh my god, I was so happy. I literally had been thinking for multiple of these check-ins, where is Yasna? And I just kept forgetting to say it. And so I have been dying for her to show up. I mean, we were teased with that at the end of Words of Radiance, and now we're 325 pages in before she actually shows her face. So Yasna is one of my favorite characters. I'm so glad she's back. I can't wait to learn more about what she discovered in Shadesmar and how she survived the whole ordeal. I don't know how much of that we're gonna find out, but I really hope we learn some things. Also, the other thing I wanted to touch on is in part 1, the little, what are they called, like epitaphs, or that's probably not the right word, but the little excerpts at the beginning of each chapter were all excerpts from a book called Oathbringer. And you guys might think this is really obvious, but I'm guessing that Oathbringer, and like within Oathbringer, I think that is like the memoir of Dalinar. I mean, that makes sense, right? Dalinar was the owner of Oathbringer for a long time. For a little while, I thought maybe it was Navani's memoir because there's a mention of her writing one, but why would she name it Oathbringer? That doesn't make sense. So I think that these are excerpts from Dalinar's memoir, but I'm not sure. All right, so I have finished part 1, and I'm so excited to be continuing on in this book, and I'll see you guys later. Bye. Alright guys, there you have it. Those are my thoughts and reactions on part 1 of Oathbringer. I had so much fun reading this section and making this video. I would say my favorite scene in this part was definitely when Kaladin went back to his hometown, and his reunion with his family was just so touching. I almost cried at that part. And then when Roshar was like telling his men to like capture Kaladin, and he tells them to stop, and they like listen to him, and Roshar is like, why are you listening to him? And Kaladin pulls out his shard blade, and everyone's just like, oh, okay. I freaking loved that part. It was so good. And then the other scene that really stands out to me from this section is when we find out that Yasna is back, because I was super excited about that. Alright guys, let me know down in the comment section what your favorite scene from part 1 is. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope it brought you a lot of really good memories of reading Oathbringer, and definitely be on the lookout for my other book diaries, because I do have them all filmed for the whole book. It's just gonna take me a little while to get through editing all of them, but they are definitely coming. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye.